Welcome to Leadership, the secret sauce, where extraordinary coaches and leaders reveal what makes them exceptional. We're your hosts, Dave Lipsky and Matt Dodson. Together, let's discover our guest's secret sauce. Today's episode is brought to you by Character Matters Coaching and Consulting. At Character Matters, we believe great leadership isn't just about results. It's about who you become along the way. From career transitions to team building, we help leaders unlock clarity, build resilience, and lead authentically. Because when character grows, impact follows. Visit charactermatterscoaching.com. All right, in today's episodes, we're sitting down with Dr. Marcia Reynolds to uncover her secret sauce of leadership. We're going to get into her story, her challenges, things she's learned along the way. I think you'll really want to stick around. I know a lot of our listeners have read your book. In fact, they've always pointed out that it was one of the most special books for them in terms of their growth as a coach. If you've been listening to the podcast for any length of time, you've heard it mentioned. So Marcia, we're really glad to have you. And you can even preview the second edition is coming out. So I'll just that won't be a spoiler because hopefully our listeners will want to pick it up and read it either on Kindle or buy the physical copy of the book. But we're really glad to have you here. And Dave.
Yeah, happy to be here. So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome, Marcia. We like to start with an energy check-in on a scale from 1 low to 10 high. Where are you and what has you at that energy level?
Right now? Well, I just got off a call with it was a group marketing books call with authors from my publisher, and we were all sharing ideas of how to market our books. So I'm all high, like, yeah, let's do that. And it's always so nice when you're with people that support you and want to help you to make the difference you want to make. So I don't know. I guess I'm at a 10. If you can tell with the energy I have, I probably need to tone it down.
No, keep it 10.
10 is good. You just, by saying that, you raised up my energy level from an 8 to a 9. So Matt, where are you right now?
I'll be 9.5. I always like to be right in the middle.
Yeah, Matt, that's very, very well played. So, Marcia, a question for you. When you're on a train, plane, or automobile and somebody next to you says hello and asks you, what do you do? How do you describe that?
That's such an interesting question. Normally, I will start by saying, I coach, but I help these people that call themselves coaches who want to make a difference in the world by helping people find their best self, step into that and accomplish great things. I help coaches do that. So I'm kind of a coach's coach. So.
Well said. We're excited to have you on. And Matt had said we created this podcast so we could hang out with coaches and talk coaching. So it's wonderful to be talking to the coach's coach. Matt?
Okay. Marcia, I'm going to ask you this question. So sometimes you've really said it's not advice that creates change, but insight. And maybe could you tell us a little bit about how you uncovered that? And maybe even just how did you, I've heard your story about how you got into coaching, but share with our audience a little bit of that.
Well, what a lot of people don't know about me is that I really am a research nerd. I love research. I love really staying up with the new stuff because neuroscience, is such a new science, really. And so things that come out that debunk the old myths, that really define what goes on in our brain and how we learn. It was because my second master's degree, after I was, thrown into running a training department and I had to figure out how to do that, I got a degree in adult learning, instructional design, which made me very curious, how do we help people learn and grow? And training is just telling people what to do. It's like leading, and you tell people what to do. And even if you did it in a fun way, they might like it and say, this is awesome. And then they go out, and as soon as it's awkward, they go back to old behavior because it's just a cognitive process. Oh, that sounds good. I'll try that. And so On my last day of my last job, when somebody sent me this article on this thing called coaching, it was 1995, I immediately signed up and watched a coaching demo and said something's different. So not only did I sign up for coaching school right away, and that happened to be the school that started the International Coach Federation, but I got into, it was not long after that Emotional Intelligence came out, Daniel Goleman's book, and I started teaching that because I had a degree in instructional design, so I could design a program, and ended up teaching it for the government with classes with neuroscientists and PhD psychologists, and we all were looking at this new science together. How do people learn and grow based on the brain? And so, and tying in emotions and looking at even the research coming out now that we impact the middle brain, the creative center, that is the rewiring process. So it's not just adding to the cognitive stew. We're actually changing brains when we get people to think about what they're saying, not just tell them what to do, but think about, I said that. Oh, and reconnect different things in their brain. And then they have an insight, which changes their brain. And especially if you're coaching who they are, not just what they do, how they're defining themselves in this moment. If we can shift that, then it changes their behavior for good. So as you can see, I'm still very excited, and the latest research coming out about, the impact of shifting identity and what is identity and how we do that. And that's even why I wrote the second edition, was to add in, our emotional connection that helps to create, get their brain going. And then how do we utilize that with our reflections and our questions. So I've added in a lot that I've learned even in the past 5 years. So it's really kind of an awesome thing to do that with people.
Yeah. Can you share with our audience a little bit about the early days of ICF? What was that? What was that like? One, because I know enough of our listeners are really curious, right? Because it seems like, okay, Magda is the CEO, and it seems like a mature organization. But the early days were probably a little bit more wild and woolly. Can you
No Wild West. Magda's asked me never to tell those stories.
Okay, then tell us.
No, because she didn't come along to 10 years after.
Yeah.
Well, understanding that first off, that we had decided to be international I was the 5th president, and one of my first tasks was to find a real professional association, because we had been just kind of a club and gathering names, and we had already decided we need to have a certification a process to legitimize our profession, since we're not licensed, and we had admin groups that were. The last one was stealing money from us. So, and in fact, when we finally found a group in DC, and I went back to the admin group to fire them, they had taken all of the records and stuck it in a warehouse in Taos, New Mexico. And I couldn't even get access to we had at that point, almost 2,000 members. Wow. And the members didn't know that for months I didn't have access. I kept having to go to Taos, New Mexico, and talk to these people and try to get the records, wow. Which I finally did, So when people wanted to know, did I pass my test? I'm like, well, we're still working on it, So wow. Going from just small group of people believing in coaching, to actually being a professional association and struggling through that. That was a big transformation. And then the merging of the two, there was the Personal and Professional Coaches Association that we merged with because they had a conference and they were in debt. And, we agreed in a meeting, a very contentious meeting, we can merge and support coaches worldwide together, but we'll pay your debt, but we have to keep the name of the International Coach Federation.
Wow.
Half their board quit.
Wow.
And because their philosophy of coaching was different than ours, which it wasn't really, but but those who stayed believed in coaching. And that was the thing. We got through the difficult times, created this what's amazing association now, because we believed in the power of coaching, no matter what crazy things we went through and bad decisions. And we had some not as effective leaders as well. You know, we went through those times, those learning years, to be able to become the association that exists today. So, and I always say, you know, I'm the only president from the 1900s that still shows up. You know, I got to talk at the last conference and talk about the history because I'm the only one.
I feel like I have to thank you for your service at this point.
That's right.
So much of the company too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Marcia, how would you describe what you uniquely bring to a coaching conversation?
I think that the whole ability to coach without thinking, you know, that is so much of what I've worked on, is not to use this, but to be fully present, to trust that what comes forth, what I hear you saying, and I'm going to offer it back to you, I don't think about it. Because if I think about it, then I'll edit it. You know, and that's a lot of what I teach. And coaches are afraid to let go of knowing, you know, of thinking, you know, is this a good question? Am I saying the right thing? If I say this, is it challenging? I'm like, good, challenge them. You know, so really knowing how to really open my entire nervous system and stay with that. And of course things pop in my brain, but to let them go, you know, especially the oh yeah, I've been there too. No, you haven't. Let that go. You know, so I think that I love doing coaching demos, and I think I demo that. You know, and they often will ask, well, you know, so why did you say this? Or why did you? I'm like, I don't know. I don't even remember saying it.
I think you were one of the first people that when I saw a demo that you did, like that you said, hey, look, this is not going to fit in your rubric if you're whatever the training that you've got. So, and I just appreciated that candor. And we've heard it on multiple occasions. In fact, we've interviewed ACC, PCC, and MCC coaches. And most of the time, the MCC coaches will say, like, hey, this is not going to fit in to a box. That we're not there, or I've got a different experience as far as my coaching goes, much more presence oriented.
Well, and it should be a conversation. The best compliment I ever got, I had done this demo, and somebody said, so what was your experience of that? And he said, well, it was so weird. You know, I thought we were just talking and having this conversation, and all of a sudden I had a breakthrough. I'm like, thank you. Because it should be, and it's in the ICF definition of coaching, that it's a spontaneous interaction, a creative process. And so I shouldn't be trying to remember a question or you know, or edit what I'm about to say. That it's just within the conversation. But I also believe reflection is as important, if not more important, than the question. And that's where it often doesn't fit with what people believe, you know, where it's like, if I am truly your thinking partner, I want to hold out your thoughts out here so you can see them, because you can't detach yourself. You know, then for me to concisely summarize your main points and offer it back, which is a practice skill. So you can then think about your thinking. I might have a follow-on question, but it's the ability to truly pick out the key things you're saying and offer that back for you to think about. That's what triggers the insights, you know, or, you know, I always say an aha moment could be wow. It could also be duh. Of course, you know, and that can happen anywhere, even at the beginning when we're just trying to see what they see. You know, and clarify, okay, this is what you're saying. I just want to make sure that I understand how you see your situation. Offering that back, and them like, oh, I said that. Yeah, that's true. That, you know, that could create the breakthrough. So, yeah.
I was thinking I pictured a curtain, and what the client experiences and what you do to make sure that the client experiences that. And the idea of like letting go. What do you do behind that curtain? And maybe there's no curtain, but what do you do to get into that state, to be able to reflect, to be able to not use your brain?
It froze for just a second. You know what, David, that's a tough one for me to answer. I think, that it ties in with just that I get to do demos all the time. I get to practice, but I know that I must model what I'm teaching, so I think that I used to, before sessions, get very present and open my heart with gratitude for having this life, and my gut with the be direct, you know how to do that, and love my client. But it feels now that I can step into that space much more easily as I'm talking to you. I'm not really thinking about what I'm saying to you. I mean, that's the conversations we have. It flows, and so with doing this over and over, but I have to say that when I watch demos from even just 5 years ago, I'm like, oi, who is that coach?
Thank goodness you're a better coach now.
Right. But that we're all on this path of mastery. There's no end point, we just get better.
Do you call it out as love, Marcia? Like I always find that we've had a few of our guests in the past call it out. I know Bill Anderson, Bob Adams always called it love, and we've had other people. Do you call it out as love with a client?
I wouldn't say it with a client. I could, but most of my clients, my own personal clients, are executives, and I'm not so sure. I'm careful about my language. Yeah. Certainly when I'm teaching, that, I always say whatever you want to call it, gratitude, compassion, love, but that I can love this human in front of me who's trying to do the best he or she can with what they know now. That accept them wherever they are in this place. And I teach leaders too, it's like, this is just where they are right now. I had in my last job, it was so stressful. I was dealing with a spiritual coach. She was a spiritual therapist, but I was talking about my boss, and she said, it's just, he's doing the best he can with the amount of light he has. And it's just, his light's this big and your light's this big. And I'm like, oh yeah. And she goes, yes, but you have the responsibility to model what big light looks like. And I'm like, shoot. Wow. But it was so amazing. The next performance review I kept saying before I would go in, big light, be big light, big light. And it was so interesting because, at the end, he said, wow, was a really different conversation with you. I'm amazed. And it was so interesting how he changed the way he dealt with me, not always telling me what to do and approving more of my projects, because we didn't have that fight anymore. There was just an acceptance of this is who he is. And whatever reason he feels he's got to do this, I'm just responsible for my good work. So, so it's even the difficult people. Can I love you as a human wherever you are on your journey. We're all trying to move forward in our own ways. So, yeah.
Marcia, you see a lot of coaches. What do you think coaches need to stop doing or start doing to stay relevant? Lots of technology. But, like, what do you think if you were to give advice for some of our listeners?
Yeah. Well, quit thinking you know anything. That's the thing, that when the client starts to tell you the story, that what I said, that instantly, oh, I've been there too, and assume that's, you've got to spend a little time, coach slow up front. Spend some time asking, what do you mean by that? So, so what do you think was motivating people to act that way, to understand how they see the situation and make sure we get an agreement on how they see it before we even then define what is it that they want instead. So I always say coach slow at first, stay present with them. Don't jump ahead and try to get somewhere like, where do you want at the end of the session? Why is this important to you? What's your measure of success? Oh, forget it. You're going to get there, through the conversation. Once you understand how they see it, and then move into, so what is it that you want to change or create that's not happening now? And who are you in that picture? And I know Richard Boyatzis said that, that envision self.
Yes.
That was good. Do that first before we go back to who you are today.
Yeah.
But I like his research. Yeah.
One of the things that you've said is, like, when you feel like you're in a fight with somebody, be the larger light. In coaching, sometimes it feels like the client's trying to impress or manage their answers or whatever those things are. And sometimes it doesn't feel like it's flowing. What do you do, or what would you suggest for coaches to try to, get that client to focus on what's most valuable as opposed to trying to show up in a certain way? Well,
first off, coaches have to really do maintain their own emotional state through that, because we set the emotional tone. So our emotions impact our clients, and my emotions of compassionate care that helps my client to feel safe, but also, triggers the dopamine, the serotonin, and the willingness to be coached. My emotional state is going to open them up a little bit. But to be able to stay there when you feel that resistance, that hesitation, and just sense it and let it go. Let it go. Don't react to that. And I know that takes practice too, but that's emotional intelligence. That notice the tenseness, let it go, and it's like, every emotion they show means something's going on, so okay, so what is it that they're resisting? So to even say, it's from what you were saying and whatever I would summarize that they said, it sounds like this is a situation you may not want to talk about or you don't want to deal with, so tell me about that. And hesitation, definitely call that out. Like especially at the end, if they say what they're going to do, but you can tell they're not really committed, to say, seems like there's not full commitment there. So tell me about that. So just be curious about it. Every emotion has a message behind it. Seek to discover what that is and stay fully present with them.
Beautifully said.
Yeah. Marcia, what about if you were to identify the ideal coach or someone that you would look for today, what is it that you would look for? Like, what is it that you really go, this is what I really need?
Well, actually, I was so fortunate that she was actually my second coach. I often call her my first coach. My second coach, I don't know, I hired him, but half the time I don't think he was even in the room.
Just over the phone?
Yeah. But Harriet Simon Salinger, who was my coach, then my colleague, we were actually the first assessors for Coach U, which was the first school that was assessing for certification with David Goldsmith. But he usually said, whatever you two think. And we talk about it a lot, but she for years was the person that I called when I was stuck. And she will be 93 next week. And I still visit her once or twice a year. And she's not in a place to coach me, but she's still wise. She's still wise. And what I loved about it was she would really fully listen and was willing to dig in there and ask me that question that went, and so having the courage, that we talk about coaches having courage, but we don't really go into what is that, my Marcia, one of my Marcia-isms is we're not there to make them feel better. We're there to help them to see better. So even if you know this, if this is a question, you're going to say, okay, so, what you're saying now seems to be contradictory to what you said before. That could trigger them. That's fine. That's good. Create resistance, because that means something just came up, and then ask the question. So, did something change as you were talking about this? It's just the follow-on question. Don't be afraid of asking a question that could challenge. It's not confrontation. It's just a question that could challenge your thinking. And isn't that why we're there? And so I'm often get yeah, Marcia, but you're so direct. And I'm like, well, I'm concise and I don't have fear. And I'm only using their words and their process. I don't add to it. And I think that's why it works. I'm not trying to interpret it, or put my take on it. I'm like, okay, you said this and this. So, and I asked the question. I'm just helping them think through it, and every emotion has an arc. They have the trigger, the intensity, and then it subsides. So just let them feel. They'll feel through it, and then it'll start to subside. And if you're present, you'll feel that. And then you say, okay, so tell me just what happened there. What just came up for you? Would you be willing to share that with me? So courage, really understanding when you don't have it, what is it that stops you from sharing what you think just came up and asking the question, and get over it. Yeah.
I think you've answered this question for me one time before, but I would love it if you could share. Why do you think coach the person, not the problem is so resonant for people?
Yeah.
Like, that's a phenomenal, like, we don't, there's a few books that people have mentioned, but why is that one? Is it people just go, well, for some reason that really, it hit it for me. Why do you think that is?
Well, I mean, it is a good title. People say, oh, that's an old title. Well, I did check it out. There was something, but it was just an audio program or something, but you can't copyright titles. But I didn't find anyone else that was using it. And it really stresses that we're coaching the human in front of us to think, and not the external problem. We're not problem solvers. We're thinking partners. But what I intended to do was to demystify coaching. So, they go through coaching school and they got to do this to pass the certification. And, and I go back to the intention of each competency. And, I may not call it the competency, but I know that's embedded in there, that, what is it that we're trying to do with the agreement? What do you do when an awareness shows up? So I help them really understand what it is they're doing with coaching. And I've always said I was a good translator of taking, the research and making it accessible. So taking the conceptual part of coaching and making it accessible to them to use in their practice, to understand what it is. And I hit the myths. I call them myths, and in the new version, we're calling it misunderstanding, because in the first edition, I called them crazy coaching beliefs, and they said you can't say crazy anymore. So it's
maybe that's why it was a bestseller.
Yeah, common coaching misunderstanding, like never interrupt. No, you can interrupt, and I also give them permission. That's what they often say. You give me permission to coach in my own style, instead of trying to follow a formula. I say, don't formula coaching. Then you're thinking, you're in your memory and not in your presence. So it's a real add-on to whatever training they've gotten, that they then understand how to translate the training into coaching that has an impact.
Would you, what other sort of unconventional resources would you recommend that to, maybe someone that's, they've read Coach the Person, Not the Problem, the first edition. And so like any other things, like I saw you'd recommended laser focused coaching. I just bought that.
Oh, yeah. In terms of coaching books,
Yeah.
certainly Lisa DeHart.
Yeah.
I love her stuff on metaphors, though, because again, like I said, people don't say how to do courage. People, there's use metaphors. Well, how do I do that? So I love her work around that. But most of the things that I read aren't at this point coaching books. Like I often. When I decided I really wanted to teach more of a deep dive into coaching, I actually hired this guy, Alan Briskin, who changed my life in the early 90s. He wrote a book called The Stirring of the Soul in the Workplace. And I got to meet Alan because he publishes with my publisher, and we have an author's retreat once a year, and we became friends. And he got into writing a lot about collective wisdom. And I wanted, how do you take collective wisdom into coaching? And a lot of what I've put in the second edition of Coach the Person is how do I get, co-regulate, use my emotions to regulate the emotions of my client, to shift their emotional state. So it's an energetic exchange. And he just came out with a book he co-authored called Space is Not Empty. I know, isn't that great?
That's
just
so good.
the energy between is not empty.
Amen.
And we need to be, it's like coaching isn't just following their agenda. We are keeping them on track on what they said they wanted or calling it out if they're shifting it. We need to maintain the emotional state to keep their emotions on track. There's some very direct things we do in coaching. So things like that. And then I never get her name right, Maha, and I don't know her last name, but the book's called The Possible Self, and I quote from her all the time, the self we think we are today is often the enemy of the self we can become, and really looking into identity and how difficult it is to let go of who I think I am in order to become the person I want to be. So I'm looking for resources outside of the coaching books to add to what I can give to coaches. Let me take from this, and translate it to coaches, and because it's such amazing work that's being done. And I have some colleagues that just came out, I think it was this week, with a new book on trust. And I'm looking forward to getting into it and interviewing them, because trust, what is trust and how do we build it and how do we break it? So there's just a lot of other resources out there other than just reading the coaching books, even though I want you to read my coaching books.
Yes. Marcia, what's the best way of our audience can get a hold of you, or what's the best way to interact with you?
Yeah. Well, finally got everything back up on my website is covisioning.com. And you can sign up for my newsletter now. Like I said, it was hacked and we finally cleaned it all up and reset the forms and made it safe. I was so sad when that happened. But of course, on LinkedIn, if, some countries they can't, but I'm on most social media, but LinkedIn is one of the main ones that you can get a hold of me. So I'm pretty accessible that way. And, if you go on my website, there's a contact form that goes directly to me.
Yeah.
So
I would also say there's a few people in the coaching world that are very generous with their resources, and you are one of those. So I just want to acknowledge that, because that is, there's a lot. If any of our listeners have not been on her website or read her book, there's a lot of free resources that she gives that are just super generous. And I just very grateful for that. So, and good questions, really good questions when you read the book alongside. So, Dave, what's your thought about what we talked about so far?
So many things. Marcia, first, I so appreciate your presence And some of the things that just really resonate with me and are going to get me thinking beyond this conversation is giving people to permission to coach in their own style is
Yeah.
really got me thinking. And I so appreciate you sharing that, because I think people misinterpret sometimes the competency-based approach is so critical, but you still need to be you. So thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
We want our clients to just be them. So we need to be too. Yeah.
Yes. And yes, I don't remember that quote, but it's, just be you because everybody else is taken. I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
Oscar Wilde or something.
I think it was Oscar Wilde. Yeah.
I think my reflection is just hearing some of the things that sort of demystify. They may be, I would call them crazy coaching ideas. It's okay for me to call it that. It is totally. It's totally fine. Because I think it breaks some walls that in my mind that I've made up about coaching. Oh, it has to be this. You have to say this.
Or you may have been taught that even.
Right. And it's just, they're kind of given a framework, but at some point in time, I have to leave that and just whatever. It has to take that, huge, long journey from the head to the heart to be able to coach with presence. Otherwise, I'm just, I'm not anybody. AI engine could spit back forth powerful questions, and that's not what they're asking.
Well, honestly, I think, when you look at ICS certification, ACC is going to go away. AI can do it. So what differentiates us as we move up into, and what's going to maintain the longevity of our profession is our presence. Our human energetic presence, which has such an impact on our clients. So really work on that. The entire introduction of the second edition of Coach the Person is just on that, because that's so important for all of us.
Yes. For our audience, that may be a theme you're going to hear over and over again this season. Really, it's spend the time, coach, really working on your present. If that's a good skill to really, anyway. So, Marcia, thank you so much for spending the time with us. We do really appreciate it and all you've given to the coaching community. So
thank you.
Yeah. And until next time. That's a wrap on today's episode. Big thanks to our sponsor, Character Matters Coaching and Consulting. If you're ready to unlock your leadership potential and make the impact you're meant to make, visit charactermatterscoaching.com and connect with Matt about transforming your team or organization. If this conversation sparks something for you, share it with a fellow leader who needs to hear it. And don't forget, all of today's resources are waiting for you in the show notes. Until next time, keep discovering your secret sauce.